You know, things are actually bad when our own Canadian government admits that things are pretty freaking bad. For instance, the Canadian government is pretty much saying, hey, we need 10 life vests for this sinking ship. So we went out and bought 3. I can't make this up. You're gonna laugh your ass off when you see this new housing update. Also, the Bank of Canada governor Tiff Macklin went all the way to like Mexico or Brazil to come to the conclusion that the world is messed up, and Canada's financial update is we're staying put. We're flatlining. No ups, no downs. More on that later. Kevin O'Leary voices his concern about Canada and America, and there's a whole lot of other updates in this video, so I do hope you stick around for the full thing. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. At the time of this recording, Elon Musk's Starship, crazy, huge, massive intergalactical spaceship has not yet flown. So let me know down in the comments if it's actually crashed, if it even got to test flight today, because I won't actually know until after this video is posted. And now let's take a look at what the heck is going on in the world, because, well, it's all very crazy. So here you go. Canada to resume free trade talks with South American bloc. That's right. We had officials that just went all the way down to Mexico, Brazil to talk about major exporters in beef, soybeans, minerals, and all that stuff. So besides Brazil, the bloc includes Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, while Bolivia is in the process of becoming a full member. Canada is doing everything it can to get off of the American independence. Canada signaled renewed interest in restarting talks with Mercosur last month, and part of a broader push to diversify trade away from the United States amid uncertainty caused by tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. At a time when rules-based trading is being threatened, we need to stand with like-minded partners, as Brazil is, to really build on that structure, to make sure that structure exists to promote trade. Canada Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu told reporters. That name speaks for itself. I do want to pass a question off to you. How do you feel about this? Like, this is a really big thing. It's no longer just like, elbows up, we're going to take, American spirits off of our liquor stores, specifically in Ontario and in British Columbia, but you actually have this massive shift of power where Canada is looking to team up with a whole whack of other countries around the world to really stick it to America. And to get a little bit more in depth here, let's take a look at this video.
Brazil, as an example, has been not good to us, not good at all. We're going to be releasing a Brazil number, I think, later on this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
This is all happening very fast, and it's happening in a way that I don't like it. Not that I know better than any of these people. I certainly am not educated in geopolitics, but I do know that American dependence is necessary for trade, for military. It's something that we've kind of embraced for so long, and it's not to say that the grass isn't necessarily greener on the other side, but in this instance, it really isn't. America is the largest economy, and Canada is doing this weird thing that started with Justin Trudeau of just really trying to stick it to America, to stick it to specifically Donald Trump, and Carney is following suit. We see that with him going to Germany to do this weird LNG deal with the German chancellor and try to get a deal with Poland, but they spat in our face, and it's all just very bizarre. So I want to pass a question off to you. Do you think that we really need to get off of American dependence, or is what Mark Carney doing good? Because I don't think what Canada's doing right now is good at all. And the numbers speak for themselves. So less about trade, more about things here domestically. Even the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the PBO, says that we need 3.2 million homes built in order to close the housing gap. So what does a PBO project? That about 227,000 new homes will be completed each year until the year 2035. Now, for people like me who couldn't move the zero over, and you have to multiply what 227,000 is by 10, because, yep, I really did that. That's 2.27 million homes. which is not the 3.2 million homes. So we're going to be missing it by about 500,000 homes. And that doesn't take into consideration per se the increase in our population or even homegrown people. And it's weird. So that kind of brings me back to the analogy I made at the beginning of the video that, hey, we need 10 life vests because we're on a sinking ship. So, hey, we went out and we didn't buy 10. We bought a few, though. Very bizarre. The PBO officer estimates that Canada needs to build 3.2 million homes in the next decade to close the housing gap, but currently isn't on track to do that. Yeah, no shit. It projects an average of 227,000 new homes will be completed each year for the next decade, but says an additional 65,000 per year will need to be built in order to close the housing gap. We need to take into consideration the fact that there will be needs and that there have been needs that have not been met over the last several years. That's what we call suppressed demand. And all of that can pretty much be chalked up to liberal incompetence. I want to pass a question off to you as we move away from that topic. Do you think that Mark Carney is capable with this new liberal government to fix the housing crisis, or do you think that it's either going to stay the same or get worse? Let me know where you guys land on that one. And then we got to take a look at Quebec, because Quebec is taking a hard stance against religion in daycare. Specifically, Quebec committee says that the government should extend religious symbols ban to daycares. No more religion in daycare, says Quebec.
Where will the Legault government ban religious symbols next?
Everything's on the table right now.
What's become clear is that both publicly funded daycares and CEGEPs are now in Minister Jean-François Roberge's crosshairs as Quebec strives for what it calls religious neutrality.
How can we reinforce laïcité?
There's been a renewed momentum to push religion out of the public sector since the scandal at the Bedford School in Côte-des-Neiges. Last year, a government report found a group of teachers avoided teaching science and sex ed, banned girls from playing soccer. A committee is in the midst of analyzing how the government's original secularism law, Bill 21, is being applied on the ground.
Le comité Pelchat-Rousseau is looking everywhere.
Education Minister Bernard Drinville is currently presiding over contentious consultations into Bill 94, which seeks to reinforce religious neutrality in schools.
J'en suis très étonné.
He told the Rights and Freedoms League he was stunned to hear schools sometimes adjust exam schedules to accommodate religious holidays like Ramadan or Yom Kippur.
Le projet de loi que nous avons sous les yeux ne le permettra plus.
This law will no longer allow that, he pledged. Meanwhile, subsidized daycare workers are concerned that banning the hiring of educators who wear religious symbols will only aggravate staff shortages.
It doesn't really matter for us what they look like. We want the people to be qualified, and as long as they don't insert religion in their services.
The Liberals think Quebec should focus more on healthcare and its recent credit rating downgrade and less on religious symbols.
We do not think that this is what Quebecers care about this morning.
To the PQ, the imposition of secularism on CEGEPs and daycares can't come fast enough.
Stop talking. Do the thing.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Okay.
Quebec says the report from the Pelchat-Rousseau Commission should arrive.
Quebec is another breed, man. Oh my goodness. And no wonder it's a race. Now that Alberta is starting to close the gap a little bit on the referendum process, and Quebec's starting to get pretty antsy and going, no, if anybody's going to separate, it's going to be us, tabarnakasi. And so here we are, kind of in a definitive moment, a crossroads, one could even argue, with shaping or the reshaping of our nation's identity. Is Canada a Christian country? Is it not a Christian country? A lot of, other countries around the world are very, very religious, and they push that onto its people, its youth in the education system. Canada is wishy-washy on this. So I want to pass a question off to you. Do you think that we should have religion, specifically Christianity, in our education system with daycares, with schools, or do you think that we should just steer away from mixing politics and our education and religion? Let me know where you guys stand on that. And then in other news, we got to take a look at the Bank of Canada because it's so freaking weird. Okay. Bank of Canada will not review 2% inflation target in 2026, Tiff Macklem says. So the Bank of Canada will not review its inflation target when its monetary policy framework comes up for renewal next year, Governor Tiff Macklem said on Tuesday, saying the current target has helped anchor inflation expectations. The central bank and the finance ministry jointly reviewed the target every 5 years and formally announced a decision within the next review set for 2026. The Bank of Canada, as per its mandate, aims to keep inflation at 2%, the midpoint of its 1 to 3% target range. And Macklem said while the bank was asking a number of questions before the review next year, the 2% target will not be considered. The 2% target has proven its worth in achieving price stability over time, Macklem said at the Bank of Mexico in Mexico City. We are already facing a more uncertain and unpredictable world. Now is not the time to question the target. It is the first time that the governor said 2% will remain unchanged when the monetary policy framework is renewed. He, however, said that ahead of the review, the Bank of Canada is mulling over how the central bank should respond to supply shocks, especially at a time when the Canadian economy was reorienting its supply chain due to the economic uncertainty from U.S. tariffs. It's always about the U.S. tariffs. So what does this actually mean? Well, this means a few different things, right? One, you could argue that it's good for stability. Businesses, investors, international markets, they do like consistency. Or this is potentially bad for the long term because Canadians are facing housing affordability, supply shocks, and new economic realities might find the Bank of Canada's rigidly tone deaf. And that's kind of where a lot of people find themselves, right? Where I find myself on this is the fact that it's a little bit hilarious that the Bank of Canada has this unchanging nature of the decision and the irony that the global speech to announce no change. And it took the Bank of Canada governor, Tiff Macklem, to go all the way to Mexico to announce that, hey, it turns out we're not doing anything. So I want to ask you guys this question. How do you feel about this? Is this good for Canada? Is this bad for Canada? Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. And then you have Liberal ministers that apparently had constructive, lengthy trade talks with American officials in D.C. Let's have a look.
Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is in Washington today to resume trade talks. This comes just days after the federal government announced it will be dropping some retaliatory tariffs on American goods. LeBlanc is expected to meet with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick sometime this week. The minister had earlier said that retaliatory tariffs were a significant point of contention in negotiations. He is hoping to reach a deal to soften the blow of Trump's separate tariffs on steel, aluminum, copper, lumber, and autos. Currently, these duties do not apply to goods under the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement on Trade.
Do you think that Canada can actually get a good deal with America? I don't think so. I think that Canada is heading down this this path of just really shifting off of American dependence, and the Liberals have shown that they are actually good at one singular thing: pissing off America and Americans, and specifically Trump. And I don't think that that's good for us in the long run. Trump does feel optimistic about it. So as you know, as America progresses their economy and gets all this, influx of cash injections, where does that leave Canada? On the sides, begging like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have some? Not more. I haven't had any, just some. I would like some. And then in other news, you've got the electric vehicle mandate, sort of. Well, you have more Canadians are commuting as remote work declines, hybrid workers on site more often. And after reading this article, I couldn't help but think there's a real shift right now that the government is pushing to make people stop remote work and go back to their jobs. And there's pros and cons of both, right? I'm not going to sit here and argue that. But what I am going to do is really take a look at the government's policies on electric vehicles. And they've been really pushing EVs. And that only really works, I guess, if you're using your car. Because if you're working from home, you could actually go a day or 2 days or 3 days, even longer sometimes, without really using your car. So being on EVs or, being climate change friendly is not really that important. So now it all kind of makes sense why they want us back to work, or part of the reason they want us going back to work. And there's pros and cons to this, but I think a lot of that chalks up to EV mandate. I don't know. Maybe that's a conspiracy take, but I'd like to know where you guys stand on that one. And then we got to take a look at Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, because he went on Fox Business and he had this to say about Canada and America relations.
The truth. That's it.
Okay. Look, immigration data, according to this new data, more Americans are fleeing to Canada. You're a Canadian, I believe. What's going on here?
Well, I have to be full disclosure. I always say this. I'm also Irish citizen, and I have a residency card, the UAE. I just want to get it out there, okay? My kids are all American, and they were born in Boston. So, I'm a guy with feet in many countries. They're going to Canada right now for a bunch of different reasons. The immigration policy there is currently more liberal than it is in the U.S. Immigration has almost fallen to zero here, and a lot of people would like to start looking at that in a more organized legal fashion. But while it remains so tight, many people are taking advantage of policies that were put in place during the Trudeau era that have not been modified yet. And so in certain provinces like Alberta, which is
so they're not fleeing America because they don't like it.
No.
They're going to Canada because there's opportunity there to get in and stay there.
And during the period where students, for example, weren't getting visas or were threatened not to be getting visas, some of them went to Canadian universities, and a lot of that's happening. But, I am looking forward to, now that Canada is a more cooperative narrative with the U.S., a trade policy to be in place with them in a matter of 90 days. I think it's going to be good for both countries.
It would indeed. Good stuff. I want you to tell us about this trading card.
So people are fleeing America, not because Canada is so great, but because Canada is such a dump that literally anyone with any record or anything can get in here. If, terrorists and bad actors can get in, then why shouldn't Americans be able to easily get in? If you can have a surge of, I don't know, off the top of my head, Indians getting into Canada quite easily, then why can't Americans get in? So literally everybody is coming into Canada, not because they want to, but because they freaking can. Something needs to be done about that. And now let's switch over to the German ambassador, who has some very interesting words to say about Mark Carney's recent trip to Germany.
Thanks for having me.
So Canada needs some allies right now as we're grappling with this situation with the United States and the trade war. It seems like things are pretty positive between Canada and Germany right now. How would you describe our relations after the two leaders met today?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think things are indeed very positive. It was a fabulous visit from my point of view. First of all, it's great to see the Prime Minister in Europe, but also in Germany in particular. I think Germany is the biggest economy in Europe. It's certainly a very good partner to Canada, and vice versa. And we have so much in common. We share so many values, but we also have a joint interest in the diversification of our trade routes, for example. And so the focus was very much on these issues today.
Right. As you know, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there was no business case to sell liquefied natural gas to Europe. We are hearing a very different message from Prime Minister Carney today. He said there's amazing potential opportunities if we open a new port in Churchill, Manitoba. We know that Germany is buying millions of tons of LNG from the United States and Qatar, not Canada, as a result of really inaction by past governments on developing LNG. Would Germany be a customer for our liquefied natural gas if we did get our act together, if you will, and start producing some of this and sending it over to Europe?
Well, ultimately, that's certainly up to the companies in Germany, the buyers, to decide if they want to purchase LNG from Canada. But I would see a huge potential for a business case, at least. And I see and I hear from the conversation that we are having with German companies that they do care about LNG. And we, as the government, certainly want to pave the way for any sort of imports, because, as we said in the beginning, the diversification, and especially in LNG imports, is of relevance to us as well. We have done our homework. We're working on the relevant import infrastructure and our ports. So we're getting ready for everything, especially also with a view to hydrogen on the longer run. But LNG imports we are doing already, so we are there. And I hope that Canada would also fulfill this step. And what I heard today in the press conference of the Prime Minister with the Chancellor in Berlin was very encouraging in this regard.
Yeah, they also talked about critical minerals. There seems to be some sort of deal struck today. We don't really have a lot of details as to what exactly the two countries have agreed to do. Can you kind of shed some light on that for me, for our audience? What have they agreed to do on critical minerals? Is there some sort of timelines for the projects that are under discussion?
Well, I would describe the document which was signed today by Ministers Hodgson and Reiche, the German Minister of Economy, as a framework document which would help us as a joint declaration of intent, help us to promote the exports of critical minerals and to jointly seek for diversification of our routes, but also to work jointly on research, for example, to work jointly on all sorts of critical minerals related activities. And it's not yet with a timeline, and it's still not very concrete in terms of single projects which we wanted to undertake, but it opens the door, and we do have some support schemes both in Germany and in Canada, like a raw materials fund in Germany, which we will use for the benefit of our cooperation in critical minerals.
Canada and Germany did about $30 billion in two-way trade last year, so a sizable amount, as you say.
That's
we are large trading partners. I think you're our sixth largest, so certainly very consequential. How much higher can we go from $30 billion? What's a reasonable expectation in terms of trade between our two countries as we move forward?
Well, actually, I think there's still room for improvement, certainly so, and critical minerals could be a cornerstone in this improvement, but also our cooperation in other areas. We have a lot of investments already. We have around 500 German companies which are present here in Canada, and I think that with the development south of our border to the United States, that certainly other countries, other businesses are also looking at Canada more favorably than ever before. So I see it's well possible that we are seeing another increase in this trade volume. Yeah.
Is Canada looking better now, given what's happening in the United States?
Well, you never look bad, so therefore I think...
yeah, Canada has been looking bad and can very much look worse, especially under Liberal leadership.
Yeah, at least it's becoming more and more visible for Germans, for European companies, because of what happened in terms of tariffs. But we always looked at Canada very favorably because they are a close ally at the G7, NATO ally, and therefore we always had an open eye on Canada for sure.
Let's talk about Ukraine. How does Germany feel about...
Notice how he didn't say anything about how good of business partners we've been, how good of minerals we have, or gas, the quality, or the LNG, any of that. Nothing about our actual, what we have, our services, what we can provide them, right? Or even our leadership. It was just about the fact that, well, yeah, we've always kept a close eye on you, not because we want to, but because you're an ally and we have to. That's a bit of a pathetic reason for Germany to keep Canada in the back pocket.
The prospect of a peace deal. It seemed like things were moving in the right direction last week after that summit at the White House, but now things seem to have stalled a little bit and negotiations have hit a wall, at least between Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. How do you see things? What's the current state of affairs in your eyes?
Well, I think, first of all, it's very important that the meeting in Alaska took place between the presidents, and it's, of course, very important that we also had the meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington, and that we are at least approaching some sort of peace process. But we also say it's very clear that we have to find a way to stop the killing and to arrange for a ceasefire arrangement. Ukraine has to be on the table. They have to be with talking to Vladimir Putin directly, and if President Zelensky is ready to do that, I hope that also the Russian side would agree, and therefore we're very grateful for the efforts of the U.S. president to try to bring everybody together to that table. The chances were probably never better in the last 3.5 years, but we're certainly not there yet. It takes a lot of effort on the diplomatic front. We're happy to be part of it, but jointly with Canada, for example, in the coalition of the willing, we're also doing a lot jointly there.
On the security guarantees for Ukraine, Prime Minister Mark Carney has floated the possibility of Canadian troops being on the ground in Ukraine in a post-war situation if we do come to that peace deal that you're talking about. What is Germany willing to offer for its part of keeping the peace in Ukraine?
Not as much as Canada.
Well, we're having this discussion as we speak in Germany, but also among partners in the coalition of the willing, as we call it. In this coalition, we are discussing several options. One, of course, would be to send boots on the ground, so our own soldiers to Ukraine, but there's many other ways also to guarantee that Ukraine can defend itself, that they will not be attacked again after a possible peace deal, and this is what we are currently deliberating with our partners, and certainly Germany will play its part in it, not only continuing what we are doing in terms of delivery of arms and other aid, but certainly also more than that. But the decision if to send troops or not is not being taken in Germany yet.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Matthias.
So Germany, which is significantly closer to Ukraine, is not ready to discuss sending troops. But for some reason, Canada, on the literal opposite side of the world, is like, oh yeah, for sure, man, we're going to send troops. How many you need? We're already $20 billion in the hole. What's a few extra lives on top of the money we've sent you? This is insane. This is insane. Even the surrounding countries, the countries that are closer with a better relationship, probably more trade, and actually physically land-wise closer, like within driving distance ish of Ukraine, they're like, yeah, nah, we're not sending troops on the ground. But Canada, yep, off we go. Why not? Oh my goodness, that's embarrassing. I would love to know what you guys think about that piece. That is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn post notifications on, and I'll see you in another one. Bye for now.